Stay dandy, baby. Don't Mess With Me, Miss Nagatoro continues to be a giant ball of awkwardness, but just like a train wreck in slow motion, I simply cannot look away. First, I just want to say that things are going to be a little different in this review this week. I did watch last week's episode. I did my recording for my review, but I didn't have an opportunity to edit it. So I'm actually going to include it in this video right here, and then I'm just going to briefly talk about the latest episode of the series. There are going to be no imagery for this review too, because frankly I just don't have the time, but I want to make sure that I can get back on track and get this review out, because I don't want to get too far behind on the series. So let's go ahead and jump in. But before we do, remember, if you guys do like my videos, maybe think about subscribing to the channel right now. It helps out my content a lot. Hit that like button, and of course, if you'd like to really go the extra mile, check me out on Patreon. I would really appreciate the monthly donations, as small as they could even be. And remember, first-time donators, I'll review an anime series of your choice. So let's go ahead and jump right into the madness. We just got our beach episode, so it only makes sense that we would get our summer festival episode. If you've ever watched a slice of life anime series, you've probably seen this type of content before. But of course, the drama of Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro all comes from the interactions between the titular Nagatoro herself and, of course, her very sheepish senpai. This was a surprisingly sweet and enduring episode of the series, and again, is also absolute torture. It's the type of episode that drove me crazy, because I want to see Naoto make a move. I want to see him do something to at least show that he seems to be enjoying his time with Nagatoro, despite the fact that she's an absolute demon to him. But again, that's kind of the entire point of the series, is waiting for that inevitable moment, which is probably never going to happen in this season, as it is based on a long-running manga series, which apparently has no end in sight. So I have a feeling it's going to be a very long time until both of these characters actually display their true feelings to one another. But this episode made it kind of clear that while Nagatoro is certainly the alpha in this relationship, they're very much very nervous around each other when it comes to just about everything. But I do love that Naoto actually managed to put himself out there in this episode. You can see that his confidence is growing in a number of really interesting ways. And also, breaking the mold this week, we get to see that most of this story actually takes up 90% of the episode. Typically, we get two individual stories in an episode of Nagatoro. This one is almost one giant continuous one with one smaller moment at the very end, which again establishes that Naoto is starting to become a lot more confident in who he is and what he feels. And I think that's really important. So basically, like I said, this entire episode is the summer festival, where all of the people in Japan, the young people, couple up together, they go out to the fairgrounds, they play games, they eat delicious food, and they look at fireworks. Not too dissimilar from some of the events that we have here in America. Of course, the connotation in Japan usually involves couples, especially in these slice of life shows, and Naoto himself is a little lonely here. He's even at his house wondering why Nagatoro has not called him to go to the festival, and eventually he nervously ends up going there himself in the hopes of potentially seeing her there. Instead, he ends up running into her friends, and they end up having a little bit of fun with Senpai by quite literally putting a spiked dog collar on him, which is not only humiliating, but also kind of funny, I have to admit. They do let him know that Nagatoro is actually not at the festival because she's doing an event for the swim team, but eventually when she gets a picture from her friends of Naoto in a frigging dog collar, she pretty much flips her shit and decides to just flash her way all the way to the festival to get her senpai back. And that leads to a lot of really fun moments of watching the characters interact with each other, playing games at the festival, and then eventually getting some alone time between the two characters, which is really what the heart of this episode is all about. And again, I think one of the best things about this episode is, again, seeing that Naoto is gaining a lot of confidence here. But at the same time, he still never really went all the way to 100% confidence, with this great scene between him and Nagatoro of her mentioning that if she ever wanted to go somewhere, in particular with him, all he needs to do is ask. And basically, it's her subtle way of saying, look, if you want to hang out with me, talk to me. If you want to hang out with me, let's go somewhere. Let's actually make it happen. And watching her blush in this moment is nothing short of adorable. And it leads to a final scene of the episode where they end up going to the fireworks display, and they get caught in the line because that's where everybody's going to watch all these fireworks at this display place. But eventually, he ends up taking her to this secret location, which is good for a number of reasons. Because one, it starts to show that he's not afraid to make physical contact with her by actually grabbing her hand and bringing her into the woods. But also, it's really played for laughs as well, as this entire moment is very cliche in the sense that it seems like he's trying to bring her to a secluded, dark place so that he can either A, confess his love, or B, do the impossible for Naoto, which is to actually kiss a female for once. But what I love about this scene is that, again, it's not just Naoto who's the one who's actually going through the torture, it's actually Nagatoro. It's very clear that she wants him to be confident and to make a move, but she herself doesn't necessarily want to do that either. And with him actually, like, egging her on and saying, what did you expect me to do in this situation? Be specific about it. Did you want me to wrap my arms around you? Did you want me to give you a kiss? And it really messes with her head to the point where he actually starts to bring that up. But then it leads to a great moment where all of these fireworks light up the woods around them, and there are all these couples around them that are just hanging out by their very own trees, and they're all making out with one another. And when they both see this, they just flip out, they don't know how to process it, and they just run away. And it leads to a great scene of them sort of like away from each other as they're sitting down watching the fireworks, but at the same time, you can see the relationship between these characters is blossoming, but it's made very clear by this episode that it's not just Naoto who is the one who is being tortured here, it's Nagatoro as well. And it's just stupid fucking adorable. I have to say it. I don't know why it works so well in this series, but it's just great seeing it on display here. There is one final part of the episode where it's like the next part of the school year, and Naoto is making his way home when he suddenly sees Nagatoro hanging out with all their friends, and these two douchebags come over. They're so unimportant, they don't even have physical facial characteristics. Like, they're so not important. They just suck. And of course they try to hit on Nagatoro, and she's just denying them at pretty much every single turn. They're being a little handsy with her as well, much to her anger. And Naoto, like a freaking boss, decides to walk up and do something about it. And I almost expected him to just turn tail and run, and it was going to be like a really embarrassing moment for him. But he actually just tells Nagatoro, hey, let's get out of here. And she actually ends up following suit, with all of her other friends following along as well. And what I love about this moment, again, is that it's showing how much more confident he's become, but also the influence that he's actually kind of had on Nagatoro's friends as well. They seem to like hanging out with him too, mostly because he's just a kind of a cool, non-confrontational kind of guy. He's always had this problem, it seems, with like hanging out with other people and being sociable, as we've never really seen Naoto hang out with anyone. He doesn't seem to have like a best friend or anything. But little by little, Nagatoro is bringing out the best qualities in him, and he's actually ended up making these friends whether he'd like to admit it or not. And it's a bunch of high school girls. What young man wouldn't want that at all? He's actually kind of awesome at this point, and getting to see his character grow and change is the best thing about the entire series as far as I'm concerned. That and the genuine build-up of the relationship between him and Nagatoro, which feels surprisingly real and natural, as ridiculous and noodly army as it can actually get. This is a lot better than I honestly expected, and while it's nothing super brand new or anything, it's done with a lot of really good production value, and again, it's those character expressions. That's really my favorite thing about this show. It's just the look of the characters, the weird expressions that they make, and of course just all the uncomfortable situations that both Naoto and Nagatoro actually have to end up going through. It's truly what makes this experience what it is. It has no right to look this good, and it's some honestly good, solid material. Again, not reinventing the wheel in any sense of the words, but it's kind of that show that's just great if you just want to watch something that's kind of relaxing and kind of funny. If you're watching like a lot of serious anime, I think honestly this is the perfect kind of refresher kind of anime. The thing that you watch, just relax and enjoy it for what it is. So, what's the rundown on this episode of Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro? It's rare that I find a slice of life that I like, especially one that initially I hated so much. but the series continues to grow on me in the best way possible. Now, I've made it clear in the past that I'm an action anime kind of guy. It's just my favorite kind of genre. But I've delved into the realm of slice of life many a time, and a lot of the times I end up just not liking it. I'd go as far as to say this is one that I'm actually enjoying quite a bit, and I can't wait to see ultimately where it's going to end, if it's going to have a solid conclusion, if there's going to be a continuation of this in the future. And it's funny because this was the type of show that before it even aired, I figured there was going to be a tremendous amount of controversy about it, because it was basically about a girl who was bullying a boy. And, you know, the Twitter sphere is going to shit their freaking woke-ass pants all about that. And I'm really glad that it's not really creating an uproar at all. It's just kind of being just another standard slice-of-life show with some pretty interesting, funny characters. And I really loved that a lot. And maybe it is making a wave and I'm just not following it, but still, I have to say that I am enjoying this show, and it's very mellow and fun to watch and just puts a big smile on my face the entire time. Again, I love the production value of the show as well. Again, nothing super grandiose or amazing, but it's all about those character expressions and their amazing voice acting. It's always just really fun to watch. And I gotta say, this was like the first episode where I was like genuinely almost cheering on Naoto, just to see like how far he has come from the beginning of the series, where he could barely even look at a female. Now look at him. He's hanging out with a whole group of them, and he's the one who ended up making it happen. That's a pretty big transformation for the character, and I can't wait to see more of how he's going to grow, as well as his relationship with Nagatoro herself, who continues to be fun, cheeky, ridiculous, and feisty. These characters are a lot of fun, and I can't wait to watch more of them. I really liked this episode. It's the perfect type of summer episode if you're into that type of thing. It goes hand in hand with the beach episode of the series, without being too ridiculous and over the top, and thank God not really all that fan servicey at all. I was afraid that that's what most of the series was going to be all about, and thankfully, it's almost none of that, period. It's really about the characters and their growth with each other, and I gotta say, it's not what I was expecting. That's all I gotta say. So, I really liked this one. 4 out of 5 from me. Another solid addition to the series, and again, considering I initially really hated this, and it's growing on me this much, I think that's saying a lot. I think Slice of Life fans are certainly going to get something out of this show. So let's get one thing straight. The latest episode of Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro has one of my favorite moments from the entire series. And it's not a heartwarming moment. It's nothing super mega cringy, but it might be kind of cringy for certain people. It's got to be that one moment where Nagatoro decided that she was going to do some strength training with Naoto. And her training was going to involve him getting on all fours, and she was going to sit on his back. It didn't take long before she started riding him like a freaking horse, and of course, they're stupid high school students, so they left the door open for 2 girls to casually walk by and see what might be one of the weirdest looking things that they'll probably ever see in their life, and also one of the funniest images from the entire show. That being said, I don't have as much to talk about in the latest episode of Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro. It kind of goes back to the basics on a lot of things, which is basically her just teasing him and making him look like a fool the entire time. One of the biggest jokes of this entire episode is the fact that these big exams are getting ready to come up, and Nagatoro is messing with Naoto over the fact that if he doesn't pass his exams, he could potentially be held back, and that's going to mean a number of things. One, it's just embarrassing to get held back. 2, that would mean that he is no longer going to be her senpai. They're going to be in the same grade with one another, which also means he's going to not only have to put up with her after class and during club hours, but actually all the freaking time. And this is something that really seems to bother him quite a bit. And mostly it just leads to a lot of goofy scenes of him getting teased by Nagatoro and all her friends before they eventually all manage to just barely pass their classes, and it looks like he is going to continue to be the senpai of Nagatoro. But it's the second half of the episode where, again, things get kind of standard, and there's more of those double entendre type of jokes, like Nagatoro walking into the classroom where Naoto goes to do all of his artwork, and she hears him in there with another fellow female student, and the basic implication is they're getting it on. That's basically what it is right here. And then she slams open the door and realizes that they're actually just pulling a splinter out of his finger. Again, this entire joke revolves around the fact that you're hearing things that sound like they're really naughty, but nothing really is going on here. And it leads to a super adorable scene towards the end of the episode where they're walking home with one another, and basically Nagatoro is trying to get a little bit of revenge against him. And she does this by playing a game of rock, paper, scissors with him, with the first time her actually losing. And it really pisses her off, because the whole point of this game is that whoever loses has to carry the bags of the other person. And they do this a couple of times. You can see they're getting a little competitive with one another, until eventually Nagatoro decides to push things to a brand new level, where instead of carrying bags, brags she wants a freaking ride on Naoto's back, which of course leads to the ridiculous him touching her ass kind of scene, and then she just sort of runs away without saying anything, again proving that she is just as much of a freaking nervous person as Naoto is, maybe even more so in other ways. But then it just leads to more steamy fan service at the end of the episode where she decides to give him a call while she's in the bath. And of course, another ridiculous happenstance. She turns on the camera and Naoto gets to get a big old peek of them Nagatoros, if you know what I mean. So what's the rundown on this episode of Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro? While I enjoyed the last one a little bit more for the fact that it just felt more like more was happening, this was just kind of like a standard turn your brain off and laugh kind of episode, and in that sense it still worked. It still had everything that makes the series fun, which are its characters, its expressions, and of course all the ridiculous scenarios they end up finding themselves in, especially the moments with Naoto going through the whole thing in his head about what would happen if he actually got held back with everyone. It led to some great scenes, but again, it's that horse riding moment. For me, that's just what this entire episode is all about for me. And the reaction from those two girls when they saw it, that was just genius. It was so awkward, it was amazing. It's so awkward, it's like the type of thing you watch that even if someone came in and watched you watching it, it would be just as awkward. It would be like a fourth wall double break, everyone's awkward kind of moment. I don't know how to describe it. It was just nuts. And really, that's all you could really expect from a show like this, is a lot of nuttiness and funny moments with good comedic timing, and this episode certainly had it in spades, and it continues to do good on the production value side of things with the look of the characters, the expressions, and the overall atmosphere, and of course the amazing pitch-perfect voice acting. Again, if you're just looking for that nice little slice-of-life comedy show, this might be the one for you. Again, it still surprises me that this is the show that I expected to hate more than just about anything, and I actually look forward to watching it every week, so it's definitely a pleasant surprise in my book, and as I've said many times in my review of Nagatoro, it's kind of like the breath mint of anime. After watching a lot of other shows throughout the week, it's sort of the perfect show to sort of cleanse my palate at the very end, to bring me back to my senses, to just kick back, relax, and laugh a little bit. So, yeah, I liked this episode. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. But I'd really love to get your thoughts about both of these episodes, so make sure to sound off in the comments section below, and let's have a discussion all about it. But that pretty much is it for today, guys. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby.